Good afternoon. Let's get going on chapter 5 again. Let me just review a couple things. We left off with SPQR. This is really the period, and that means again that, and if I'm looking elsewhere, it just means I'm looking at my notes again. But again, that means the Senate and the public. And many historians look back on this period, which is approximately 287 BCE, as the period when the struggle of the orders, the different classes, finishes and ends. And many look at this as like the golden age of shared government in Rome. And what that means is there was the Senate with the patricians, the aristocracy, there was the assembly with the workers and the population, and the army, etc. And there was also the executive, the leader, if you will. Now, I just want to leave you with the idea that this is very similar to what we have in the United States, what we have in England, where there's an upper house, a lower chamber, the House of Lords, the lower chamber, House of Commons, and the Prime Minister. And in our case, we have a president, an executive, a Congress, and a Senate. And now your book goes into some detail in trying to explain what a republic is. That a republic is just a form of government that tries to protect, in some ways, the patricians or the oligarch or the elites in power. Now, remember, in the United States, we call ourselves a republic. What is the national? I mean, the I pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands. So I think, that might have been changed a little bit, that concept, but it's for the citizens, I believe we would say today. Okay, let's go on with the Romans for a little bit, and let's talk about their character. What makes up a Roman? Well, the Roman identity really were the following things: a reverence for tradition, which means, and their morality comes from this, and that is called for them, in Latin, of course, mas maiorum, from the majority traditions of the place. That's, of the respect for elders, respect for their traditions. And Romans strove to uphold those values. They wanted to make sure that let's not call them elites, but the elders were taken care of, those in the senex, in the Senate. In Roman society, think about this, and this will have to do with the church in the future as well. The father is the main, the patriarch is the main power within the family and within society, even though women were public, different than the Greeks. So I don't know, maybe they felt because women were public, they needed to make a statement about that. Patrician families were respected, and they derived their power from the father, from the pater. Think any of you are Catholic or Christian, think about this language. Of course, it's Latin, like we take Catholicism from. And of course, in 200 years, all of Rome and all of Latin Europe is going to become Christian. I really hope we have time to discuss that, but I'm not sure. If you are the oldest male ancestor, you are a forefather, and you can be, you take me as in reverence to my fathers, would take my name from my forefathers. So, for example, Julius Caesar is a nickname. Caesar's a nickname, but Julius is the name, and he's going to take his role and his name from his forefathers. We'll get into that in a moment. If you look at the picture on page 154, you will see that here is a perfect example of a Roman patrician and his son from the 1st century. He wears the toga, which you know, of course, of an aristocrat. He's got his own father, grandfather, perhaps his son there. We don't know. But this is kind of typical of the values of the Romans. The Greeks were not like that. They didn't have anything like patria, potestas. When a father could kill his children in Greek mythology, he would be killed in revenge. And his other family to be like the gods. In Rome, they wanted to be like their elders. They were in awe of their fathers and would have extreme devotion to their fathers. And so, that's a difference between Roman tradition and Greek tradition. For example, for Polybius, remember, who's the historian who thought they had the perfect idea of a shared society, he thought that what made for Roman success was this idea of respect for the elders, mas maiorum, respect for the patria, the father, the elders. Perhaps, I don't know, but I just want you to think about that. Roman mythology, I don't know if you know, is different than Greek mythology. Perhaps at some point you'll look at that. For example, whereas Zeus was the major power in Greek mythology, Jupiter was the great power in the corresponding power in Roman mythology. Neptune, god of the seas, whereas Poseidon was god of the seas in Greek mythology. I don't know, we could go on with that. Venus compared to Aphrodite, it's actually really interesting to compare them because they both had both elders and these sort of mythological symbols of justice and priestlyhood and goals. I would say then that the roles of these gods in both Greek and Roman society melded into one in their politics, their religion and politics. In the same way maybe that the ancients did as well. There's a really interesting original source of Polybius describing the Romans' worship of the ancestors on page 155. And let's just look quickly then at a Roman's duty was to honor his ancestor. And the soldiers in Rome, which was a little different than Greece because they were fighting a territorial war. The soldiers in Rome were supposed to have the duty and the honor, the privilege of fighting for the public good. And, of course, the horrible thing of all things was to be disgraced. And so your ancestral duty was, of course, as a soldier, was to fight for Rome. And this was respected in Roman values. And, most free men in antiquity were known by a given name, their father's name only. Alexander the Great was the son of Philip. A freeborn Roman, however, had at least two names. The name he was formally given, then that was the name that mattered. For example, and then the name from which the family descended. For example, Gaius Julius Caesar was, that's a famous example. He entered his adulthood as Julius, and he was a member of the family of Julius. So everybody knew what clan, what family you were from. And he was the son of Aeneas. Therefore, his forename, Gaius, was the most common name in Rome. That's like Joe or John. So Gaius really means nothing. Julius, the name of his family, Julie and Aeneas, would be his status. And his third name, Caesar, which probably meant, believe it or not, hairy. Someone to be hairy, had a lot of hair on them, was probably a joke. It was a nickname he acquired in the course of his career. Um, and so when somebody says to you, let me give you another example that your book gives. Marcus Tullius Cicero. Marcus was just his given name. Tullius was his family name, so he was known by all. And Cicero meant like garbanzo beans or chickpea. And Cincinnati was really named Curly, which is interesting. Maybe he had curly hair. So what's in a name? If you were a Roman man, for example, everything would be in a name. The name you're given, the Joe, whatever, the name of your family, and then your nickname. I know there was a whole PhD written on like gangster names as Italians, like how gangster names went back to this, like, I don't know, like Mr. Mobster Salerno, little skinny Joe. I don't know, something like that. But anyway, even for, senior and junior, that was called major and minor. Senior would be major, minor would be junior, etc. And the only persons in Rome that had, like personal names were those named by their masters, like slaves. Or pets, for example. And they were the only people who, the upper classes were the only ones whose names mattered. So where are we? We've learned a little bit about the names. We know it's a republic. We know it's got basically 3 branches of government, not too dissimilar from ours: the executive, the assembly, and the Senate. We're missing here the judicial, but in this case, the judicial often ruled with the executive. Now remember, as far back as 500, as soon as Tarquinius was killed because of his treatment of Lucretia, the Romans disliked the term rex or kingship, and they preferred to not use that, and that's why they were interested in republic. But getting to 100 BCE from 500 BCE was a little time past, and agriculture remained the chief occupation, warfare remained the chief activity of the country. And remember that Rome entered late into the world of trade, etc. One reason was because they didn't have coinage, but they did get it in 289 BCE, and then they could begin to trade and move about the world. The Romans really finished this period of isolation or relative isolation in 289, or 265 rather, 289 when they got coinage, 265 when they began, after having conquered all of Italy, north, south, east, and west, to look beyond the Roman city-state for resources, trade, and for their own support. And you could say, your book suggests, and many historians suggest, that it was kind of an accidental empire. They weren't looking to go beyond the state of Italy, but they were an accidental empire built up through a series of reactions to different kinds of changes and threats and activities abroad, as, the Seleucids, the Antagonids, and the Ptolemaics began to lose their power. The Romans sort of stepped into the void. The first thing to know is the first war of attrition, meaning a war that goes on again for a very long time, took place between 264 and 146. That's almost like 100-year war. And they were called the Punic Wars, when Roman territory expanded all the way to the tip of the boot, if you will, on the coast. And the islands of Corsica and Sardinia, the western half of Sicily, were part of another state. And then it stretched all along. Let's see, you can look at your map on page 158, all along northern Africa till it got to, remember that little place, Carthage, which is like modern day Tunisia, and a port city. And it's going to be that city, Carthage, and their land that Rome, the Roman Empire, is going to fight for that 100 years. That port city. So they are going to, I think we remember it. Remember in 800 BCE, it was founded, we recall, as a Phoenician trading port. So as a Phoenician city. And it was, of course, at that time, beginning in 264, probably the largest port of the whole of North Africa, and perhaps even larger than, any in the Italian Empire or Italian countryside. In almost every respect, as a seaport and as a naval power, of course, it was superior to Rome. Remember, I'm suggesting that it was kind of a accidental empire. But the Punic Wars, those wars that are fought for territory during that 100 years, that war of attrition, goes on between 264 and 146, this period when both Carthage and Rome are struggling between each other for power. They're two empires that really wanted to dominate the Mediterranean. Why? I guess for trade, access. Rome is going to emerge as the victor. It's going to be very sad what happens at the end of the war. The entire city of Carthage is destroyed. The Romans are going to take control of North Africa, Sicily, and all the way to Spain. I'm not going to go into too many of these wars, but they are vicious. Some people study only the wars themselves. You could see the Carthaginian coins on one page, and the Romans, I think all they wanted was to this is a huge thing, was to destroy Carthaginian naval power, because it's that naval power that gave them, of course, their trading power. I'm sure you guys have heard of some of the, some of the personalities in this war. For example, Hannibal, who fought for Carthage. You've heard about many of the individuals, Africanus, and it probably goes on and on. These are individuals who either led huge battles for either the Carthaginians or the Romans, and of course the whole idea that Hannibal is going to try to get to Rome or to Italy. He goes through the Alps. If you look at your map, you will see that, with elephants through the snow. Nobody had ever heard of that. So this is a very fun time period to really study, interestingly, study as a whole. Finally, okay, I will stop there because I want to look at, I'm not going to go into it too deeply, but we'll look at what the Roman world looked like. What is the character of the Roman world as it spreads, as you can see on page 158, across the Hellenistic world. Rome is going to come to control the Hellenistic world. And that's sort of by accident going to increase Roman territory into Spain, into North Africa. And of course, Rome is going to get unbelievably wealthy as a result of that. And it's going to bring about huge overseas expansion, and Rome is going to become the major power leading into the next, not just century, but into after the death of Christ. And Rome is going to become the seat of Christianity. Perhaps I will get far enough to explain to you how that happened. Okay, זהו. זה הכל. Okay. It just... Don't switch. Let's just process. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sweet pig. So cute. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Skype. Mm-hmm. Skype. Applications. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I thought I already had it. Okay. Mm-hmm. No. I only need it once. Okay. Sign in. I don't know. Mm-hmm. 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 What? I can't figure it out. All of a sudden, it's saying my Skype isn't working. Oh my god. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Where's Skype? Uh-huh. Okay. Alrighty then. But where's my Skype? Mm-hmm. 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 What is that? Mm-hmm. Anya?